By now you should know these are not the biblical Israelites, but rather the Edomites, the least of the flock, Amalek. But they deceived the whole world, right? And that is, their counselor, right? The synagogue of Satan, Amalek, Shalom, first and foremost, like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rukakadash, double honors, the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teaching this truth in sincerity, and shout out to Yakims, the four quarters of the earth, proclaiming this truth. Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rukakadash, Brakatem. So, they deceive the whole world. We're going to get into this video a little bit as we look at everything else that's transpiring. I don't know what the body count is today, but I know it's probably a lot higher than the 650 U.S. soldiers. And not to mention Tel Aviv and a few other places in the Israeli state, even though you don't get that much reporting from there, as you know, has been decimated. And they even took out a nuclear center there in the Israeli state. And pretty much so, in a matter of minutes, though, a lot of things had just totally blew up. But both sides think they're fighting God's war, and that even the U.S. troops are being told that they'll bring about Armageddon, which we'll get into Apostle Tahar's video on that as well, But nonetheless, though, that's what they're told. Pete Hegseth, the fucking douche, had made that announcement yesterday that, they are fighting to bring about the return of Yahweh Shai. Of course, they call him JC. And so they believe they're fighting for Armageddon. Yeah, they're fighting for the gods of war. But they are on the opposition side of Yahweh Shai, because he's going to destroy all of them. And they don't even know that they're sealing their doom. It reminds me of the scripture, woe be unto them that desire the day of the Lord, for what end is it to them? See, these people are so duped and deceived into thinking that, plantation Christianity, etc. They've been deceived by the false prophet, which false prophet means a false religious system. So, nonetheless, though, these Amalekites, they've deceived a lot of people. They pretended to be the people of the Most High, but, it's already come to revelation who the real Israelites are. These are not the biblical Israelites.
A verse in the whole Bible says, happy is the one that takes the infants of Babel and of Edom and smashes them on the rock.
And therefore, Chazal tells us in the Gemara Megillah that the relationship between Rome and Klal Yisrael is that Kishazeh Kam Zenoitha. That if somebody were to say Jerusalem is built and Caesarea is built, don't believe them. If anybody says they both lay in ruins, don't believe them. It's either one or the other. Either the Jewish people rule or the Romans rule. Because it's one melucha, it's one power. Never shall they both rule the world. Edom, Rome. Who's Rome today? Italy. The United States is considered the spiritual heir of Rome. Western culture is the spiritual heir of Edom of Rome.
Who became Edom, who became the Roman Empire, which metamorphosed into the Christian Empire, which became Christian civilization, which is now represented by the United States of America. Will suffer a crushing, humiliating defeat.
Edom, Asa was called Edom, and his descendants were known as the nation of Edom. According to Chazal, Edom is the father of Rome. What would declare to become the Roman Empire.
All the mountains are going to be full of blood, of the corpses of Edom, because of the vengeance that Hashem is going to take on them. It all started, of course, with Esav. Esav became Edom, which is a nation. Edom became Rome. The Torah says Esav is Edom. The Gemara says, the Talmud says, that Edom is Rome, is Uroimi. So Esav today is really Western civilization.
It's the implacable enemy of the Jews. It's a morphing kingdom. It's unlike the previous kingdoms. It begins as Rome, and then it morphs, becomes Christian in the 4th century, and then it divides and divides and divides.
So who's Edom? Edom includes most of Europe. It includes the United States of America. It's the Roman Empire that was never destroyed. But for those who don't understand that Italy is the seat of the Roman Empire of Edom, even though Edom is scattered, many other nations today that speak Latin languages,
that have something of the Roman Empire, including America. They are first. So Edom is everywhere. The United States of America is also part of Edom.
There it
Who
is.
becomes the children of Esau? Who's that?
Actually, a lot of that's correct.
And we talk about Galut Edom as who? As Rome, and eventually Western civilization.
But they forgot to mention the race of people.
Who is also known as Esau, Jacob's evil twin. Our tradition tells us that the Edomites are the ancestors of the Romans, and indeed of all Europeans and the entire Christian world.
Rome is the last empire of the four empires that subjugated the Jewish people. Rome is the worst of all. And Edom is going to be destroyed. We have entire books in Tanakh devoted to the destruction of Edom. It's finished. It's gone.
Guess what? You're the head tribe, though. Amalek.
You know, Europe and America are really one. But we know one thing, right? That when it comes to classic Rome, which is Europe, they're finished.
So obviously, building up the greatness, power, and unrivaled importance of America is not the role Donald Trump was chosen for. So what is his cousin's role? This video is getting long, so I'm going to be very brief and elaborate on this in the following video. America is the last manifestation of the Roman Empire, the empire which outlasted every other in its power and duration. The metaphysical progeny of Esau, who is Edom, who is Rome, who is Christian civilization, who is Western civilization, now led by the United States of America. The future of this empire is prophesied throughout the 24 books of the Jewish Bible. When considering the sheer number of prophecies in the Bible regarding the future destiny of nations, the number one spot goes, of course, to the Jewish people who, under King Mashiach, will attain the greatest heights of perfection and lead the entire world to serve God in unison. This is essentially the underlying theme of the entire Hebrew Bible. However, the number two spot, in terms of volume, concerns the ultimate destiny of Esau/Edom/Rome/Western civilization. And these prophecies are not pretty. They predict the utter destruction and desolation of Rome. I'm going to share just a couple of them with you, and in brief. We'll preface with the one that's in this past week's Haftorah, for the Torah portion of Bo, which we read in synagogues all over the world. It is taken from Jeremiah chapter 46 at the very end. As for you, my servant Jacob, don't be afraid, don't be frightened, Israel, for I will save you from afar and you children from the land of their exile. Jacob will enjoy peace and quiet, and no one will trouble him. Don't be afraid, my servant Jacob, says God, for I am with you. I will destroy all the nations among whom I have exiled you, but I will not destroy you. There's an entire book of the Bible devoted to the destruction of Edom, the book of Obadiah, a vision of Obadiah. This is what God the Lord said concerning Edom. You are thoroughly despised, you who make the mountains your lofty abode and say to yourself, who can bring me down? Even if you raise your nest as high as the eagles, even if you establish it among the stars, I will bring you down from there, declares God. On that day, declares God, I will surely make the wise men disappear from Edom, and understanding from Mount Esau. Your warriors will be broken so that the slaughter will wipe out every last man. For God's day against the nations is near. What you did will be done to you. You will be punished in kind for your deeds. The house of Jacob will be fire, the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau will be straw. They will set them alight and consume them. There will be no survivors from the house of Esau, for God has spoken.
Shalom, Yisrael.
Get that to play correctly. Salakia.
Shalom, Yisrael. It's your brother, Darashamat. I'm affiliate of the GMS Boise Idaho camp, and I'm back with another lesson. Before we jump into this, I want to say, Kal Halayim La, Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahushai, Ba'ashim, Kakadash, and double honors to the elders and apostles at Great Millstone for bringing out this truth, and shalom to the whole elect. It includes 144,000 rest of the elect that are scattered around the world, including those speckled bird Israelites who may look like other nations, but are not. This is not a black thing. You are who you are according to the seed of your fathers. And as we know from the scriptures, the Israelites were scattered all throughout this world. They mingle with these nations, and they look like these nations. But this word goes out to the 12 tribes scattered abroad because the scriptures were only written into the nation of Israel. So the title of this one, they deceived the whole world. So put together a few clips. The first one basically is a rabbi. Basically he's quoting Psalms 137. Okay, but what gets me about this is he's quoting his own punishment, the punishment of his people.
Yep.
It's coming upon them. Okay, because they did something similar to us in the past. All right. And I made a video about it on a while back, but I'll address it a little bit. That's going to be, the recompense on them. Okay? And so what these clips made me think about was the delusion that these Amalekites have, that there's two sets of so-called pale people or so-called white people, as they say. Okay? There was only one set of pale people that were created, and they all descend from Esau. Okay? As the predominant group. All right? Now, we do understand that you are who you are through the seed of your father, so now, people have, mingled, and you have Israelites that have, pale skin, you have other nations that have pale skin. But the predominant portion of the pale people are the Edomites. Okay? And, back in the day, that's who the pale people were. All right? The Edomites. Right? So there was only one nation of pale people. Okay? As a whole. All right? So it's not that, just America is the Edomites, and just Europe is Edomites, and those Amalekites over in the Holy Land, they are a totally different group, and all that. No, they're all one people. And it's interesting how they just point the finger at each other. A kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. And then you're watching a division, growing worldwide. All right? So, these people, that anointed cherub that covered Esau, Edom, he put that covering cast over all people, okay, and deceived them. All right? He deceived himself and his own people because he actually believes his lies. All right? Now, he's, taught us history from a standpoint that, they are who they say they are, but we know that's a lie. We know that they're the Edomites. And that's what we're going to go into just a little bit. Okay? There aren't two sets of white people. It's just the Edomites. Okay? So let's just read Psalms 137 since he brought it up. In verse 7 it says, "Remember, O Yahweh, the children of Edom in the day of Jerusalem," when the Babylonians were coming in, "who said, raise it, raise it." Okay, so they wanted it to be totally destroyed. Tear down, even to the foundation thereof. "O daughter of Babylon, who are to be destroyed." The daughter of Babylon is America. Okay, who are to be destroyed, because this place is destined for destruction. It's in prophecy. It's set in stone. It has to happen. "Happy shall he be that rewarded thee as thou hast served us." And what is this going into? Well, the Edomites did all kind of atrocities to us. Okay? And all those atrocities have to get done back to them. Okay? In a righteous manner, though. All right? And it says, "Happy shall he be that taketh and dasheth thy little ones against the stones." And so that first rabbi was going into, he was saying, hey, we're going to do that to these so-called Edomites over here in America and in Europe, okay? Modern Christianity, so to say. So that's how they say, like, oh yeah, Catholicism was the secession of Rome, and spiritually, that's Edom. Man, the Edomites are bloodline, okay? Stop coming with all that nonsense, all right? So, he's trying to put his judgment on half of his people, okay? Because they're divided against themselves. They don't really know, who they are. But we can look at some history and actually see who did this and who deserves, the recompense for it. So let's get it. This is the book 500 Nations, an illustrated history of North American Indians. So I've used this book before. Well, I've used a clip of this book before by someone else, so I had to get the book to look into it. Okay, so let's go. It's about page 1. So let's look at page 113. Okay, or 112. It's chapter 3, Clash of Cultures. When you see those people in those boats, they're dark-skinned, they're swarthy people. Okay, and look at their hair of Negroes. And it's just talking about North America. Okay, now this page should be familiar for those who've seen the previous video on this. And it reads, "The Indians and Columbus. The Spaniards made bets as to who would slit a man in two, or cut off his head at one blow. Or they opened up his bowels. They tore the babies from their mother's breast by their feet and dashed their heads against the rocks. They spitted the bodies of other babes, together with their mothers, and all who were before them on their swords. They hanged Indians, and by 13s in honor and reverence for our Redeemer and the 12 apostles, they put wood underneath. With fire, they burned the Indians alive. All saw the above things. All these did my own eyes witness. Okay, so that's a quote from that person right there. So these Edomites, they did these things to us. And so that recompense, is going to have to come on to them. Okay? But the mystery still lies. Who is two sets of white people? Well, there is no two sets of white people. They're one people. They're just a nation divided against itself that cannot stand. So all these atrocities that they did to us is going to be done unto them, as we just read in Psalm chapter 137.
So, like everything else, so you can see, though, that the Most High is recompensing them. And it begins with the destruction of Babylon the Great, and then the 1,000 years of captivity until they're done away with for good. And especially the head tribe of Amalek, and those that are going and hiding in bunkers, because this thing's going to escalate, especially when it goes nuclear. Now, like everything else, though, there's talks that Putin may declare a peace deal, meaning that they have to listen to Putin, and this thing could back off a little bit. That may come, but nonetheless, though, eventually it escalates into the nuclear war. But you know what has to be mandated before the nuclear war could come. So like everything else, though, we're watching things unfold. But nonetheless, though, the small hats deceive the world into believing that they're the Jews when they are not. And that's already been blown out of the water anyways. They're not the biblical Israelites. We know who the biblical Israelites are. And like everything else, though, this is a body count from yesterday, as you can see, 19 hours ago. 650 casualties for the U.S. military in 2 days. Okay, so that's only for the 2 days. Okay, this is March 4. So there's a lot more casualties than that on the U.S. side. Which forced aircraft carrier to flee, aka the Lincoln. IRGC spokesman says the U.S. military suffered 650 casualties in the first 2 days of Iran's retaliatory strikes. So they're getting their asses whooped. You already heard what Scott Ritter said yesterday. You've been following these videos. And I did manage to get them on YouTube. For some reason, it didn't upload into here. So I uploaded them in another room. So it could be this browser, but nonetheless, though, I have alternatives to uploading videos. So Salakia for those watching me on YouTube as to the delay, but that's what it was. It just wasn't uploading, Murder of innocents. Israeli-U.S. aggression against southern Iran school killed 165 children. And, what they refer to as jihad, a jihad means a vengeance in Islamic terms. It basically means, that retaliation. That's what you're seeing. Iran is retaliating for this bloodshed. For the bloodthirsty Edomites, especially Amalek. And Amalek has been hit hard, by the way. They're not even being honest. That was just, the U.S. soldiers' side as to how many were killed. But this particular event, which was done on the very first day, as I scanned the pages, they wailed with tears as a painful cry escaped him. His daughter were among the victims of the U.S.-Israeli terror strike on Saturday, mourning the devastated Sharjah Chabli Elementary School in Minab. Tahiri, the prosecutor of Minab, confirmed the horrific toll. Yesterday morning, following the criminal attack by Great Satan and the criminalist Zionist regime, an elementary school was targeted. So far, 165 children have been martyred and nearly 100 injured in this savage attack, most of whom were students. Among the martyrs, also educational staff and parents of the students. I mean, this cannot go unpunished. I mean, So jihad in Islamic terms means, righteous vengeance, by the way. That's what it means, literally. That's what jihad means. So, of course they want revenge. And it's a righteous revenge. They were attacked. They were a sovereign nation and they were attacked. But nonetheless, though, this is coming from Scott Ritter, who is on OAN. And he's saying, look, all the bases have already been destroyed by Iran. Getting close to the unthinkable. yeah, the U.S. has already lost the war. They'll never admit it, but once the bases are completely wiped out, which is what's happening, they ain't got nowhere to deploy from, right? And they're talking about a ground invasion into Iran, you know, sending ground troops in. So good luck with that. Speaking to OAN, I believe this is Colonel McGregor, who also is an expert, and he's just laying it out what's happening.
What about China's ability to impact outcomes in the Straits of Hormuz with what is now the government of Iran, and then 50% of their oil on the other side waiting to get through?
Well, China and Russia are sitting on the sidelines monitoring everything. They're in close touch with the government. They're providing satellite intelligence, which accounts for some of the tremendous successes, particularly in Israel and our U.S. bases. All of our bases have been destroyed. Our harbor installations are destroyed. We're actually having to fall back on India and Indian ports, which are less than ideal. That's what the Navy says. And I think Iran, much to our disappointment, is faring very, very well. The question is, how long can we keep this up? I think logistics is the vulnerable part of this entire operation. Remember, you've got to go back and reload. You've got to fly things in. You've got to sail in. Iran is a continental power, 93 million people, the size of Western Europe. Both China and Russia are continental powers. They don't have supply chain problems. Their manufacturing capabilities are intact. Right now, the missile cities that underlie all of Iran's provinces are untouched, and they have an inexhaustible supply of missiles. I think this is going to go on for some time. The question is, when does Israel step up and say they've had enough? We went through that before during the 12-day war. When do they say this is too much? When do they say if this doesn't stop, we use a nuclear weapon? That's what I would be concerned about, and that's where President Trump, who really doesn't appear to be in charge, Mr. Netanyahu does, has got to be prepared to step in and say, no, there will be no use of nuclear weapons. That's what I worry about.
So there you go. And then we also know it as a Samson option. But the nuclear war cannot happen until the MOTB is mandated worldwide. And that will come. So, like I said, you know, as heavy as this is, and as exciting as this is, I'm looking at Putin as possibly coming in there and saying that this has to stop or else. You know, and that, okay, you know, the U.S. has to back off attacking Iran. Because, of course, you know, the repercussions of that, you know, that's the way that it's looking like. But, again, you know, this is going to go on for a while. And already gas prices are jumping. A lot of things are already happening. But while they're bullying that, we know that the Israeli state is invading Lebanon. And they also... the U.S. is also invaded, and they also talked about a nice takeover of Cuba, but they also launched military operations in Ecuador. Joint military operation with Ecuador targeted what the U.S. called designated terrorist organizations of the country. Oh, no, not the narco-terrorist thing again. Oh, boy. Same song. Well, they've been playing this same song that Iran's close to getting a nuclear weapon, and most people are supposed to buy that bullshit. U.S. terrorists launched military operations against Ecuador against what they call designated or terrorist organizations inside South American countries. Southern Command said Tuesday. Military released no details on the operation, but suggested in a statement that it was an extension of strikes carried out by Trump against suspected drug trafficking organizations. So here we go again. Ecuador wasn't even on the fucking list. You see what he's doing? You see that, oh, well, see, that's what they do. They want all of it. I mean, they are really hammering it. Coast Guard has been deployed in the Eastern Pacific off the coast of Ecuador, Colombia, and other countries, helping interdict cocaine shipments known as Operation Pacific Viper. Yeah, the cocaine shipments are mostly coming from Florida into those countries, as Colombia, or, yeah, I think it was Colombia that pointed that out. You know, because they already caught them. And then like everything else, so you know how Amalek likes to play the victim role. You know, you see all this shit on TV, you know, poor Tel Aviv, even though they fucking launched this attack. Well, here's a good point of view. You cannot bomb a sovereign nation and then pretend that you are the victim when that nation responds. And Amalek is notorious for doing that. So is the U.S., for that matter. That is narrative manipulation. When the U.S. and Israeli state initiated strikes, the media labels Iran's retaliation as attacks without context. It distorts reality. Words matter. Framing matters. If you start the fight, you don't get to control the moral high ground when the other side fights back. That isn't journalism. That's gaslighting. That's all these fucking news agencies. I ain't even fucking watching bullshit Fox or bullshit CNN or bullshit PMS NBC. I would never fucking watch that. I don't even fucking watch Alex Jones anymore because he's too pro-Zionist. You know, I mean, I used to catch a little bit here and there when he's speaking against the pandemic, but come on, you know, it's ridiculous how he portrays everything. See, I'm not deceived. Well, then again, it said the elect wouldn't be deceived. They would try to deceive the elect, but would not be able to. And they'll come in with more tactics. And what's happening is that you got division. You got Esau against Esau, right? How deeply have Trump's Iran strike split America, aka Egyptian against Egyptian, as according to Isaiah chapter 19. RT breaks down public and Capitol Hill reactions to the new war, the new West Asia war, launched days before election season. U.S. President Trump's order to attack Iran has drawn mixed reactions among Babylonians, with polls showing a clear public spirit and statements from lawmakers exposing divisions with both the Republican and Democratic parties. And believe it or not, Governor Newsom here in California has actually spoke up against this war. He actually went on TV most recently, similar to Tucker Carlson. Trump claimed the joint U.S.-Israeli military campaign launched on Saturday and dubbed Operation Epic Fury was necessary to dismantle Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. But he even went further to say that he was trying to save lives. He has already costed them over 650 in there. When Iran never launched a long-range weapon to the U.S., hasn't killed anybody in the U.S. until after they were attacked. Tehran insisted they were entirely unprovoked and has retaliated with missiles and drones targeting the Israeli state and U.S. bases across West Asia. Analysts note the campaign launched mere days before primary contests begin for the November midterm general elections in the U.S. Has the lowest starting support in modern American history. RT breaks down the numbers. In other words, it says, a YouGov snap poll conducted on the first day of strikes found 34% of Americans supported the action, with 44% opposed, making a historic low in initial support for a major U.S. military campaign, and opposed to the war in Afghanistan, 92% initial approval, and the Iraq war, 71%. So you can see how much lower the numbers are, you know, by the moral majority. So a lot of them don't support this, but it's too late. You know, and like everything else, though, this was a false flag, and the Young Turks, which is usually they're mainstream, but they are forced to even talk about this, that the Israeli state might have done a false flag attack. They have to say it like that, you know, because like everything else, so the Zionists allow them on there, but they have to say it in such a way. But yet at the same time, they're going on record and reporting on this, that this was a Mossad operation, you know, that, you know, the Saudi oil being blown up by a drone attack was in fact the Israeli state to blame Iran to draw Saudi Arabia into the war.
Saudi Arabia's state oil company, Aramco, shut down its oil refinery in Ras Tanura after drone strikes were carried out, allegedly, targeted by Iran. Now, there has been a larger wave of attacks on energy infrastructure in the Gulf in response to Israel and America's bombing campaign against Iran, and now there are serious concerns about how this expanding war will impact the world's economy. Now, Cenk, before I give you some of the details, there have been some contradicting reports about who targeted Saudi Arabia.
This is a bit shocking, and it's not confirmed yet. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts. But there's a report that the Israelis might have hit Saudi Arabia.
There it is.
A flag operation to draw them into the war against Iran. And let's,
at least the flock shall draw them out.
Confirmed, but let's give you the details first.
Yes, and remember, we're in the fog of war. So sometimes things appear pretty clear, and then it turns out you have more details later that go against that narrative. Now, before we get any further, again, it is important to remember we're in the fog of war, and there's all sorts of intentionally misleading propaganda out there. So it is not confirmed that Iran struck Saudi oil infrastructure. I want to be clear about that. So the Aramco oil refinery, if you're unfamiliar with it, houses one of the Middle East's largest refineries and actually has the capacity to refine 550,000 barrels per day. It serves as a critical export terminal for Saudi crude oil and is a key supplier of transport fuels like diesel for buyers in Europe. Now, according to the official Saudi press agency, there was a limited fire at the plant caused by debris from the interception of 2 drones that were targeting the facility. The question here is, whose drones were they, right? Now, there were no injuries reported, thankfully, and the blaze was brought under control. However, Aramco quickly shut down the refinery as a precautionary measure. Now Iran is actually denying that they were responsible for any strikes in Saudi Arabia specifically. Iran's deputy foreign minister told CNN the following: "We have already been in touch with our Saudi brothers, and we have talked about this issue. Iran is not responsible for the attack against the oil installations in Saudi Arabia." On top of that, I think it's worth noting that a friend of the show and wonderful journalist Ryan Grimm wrote that Saudi Arabia will eventually be able to figure out where the missile came from that struck their oil field, because there were strikes on the oil field as well. And if it's confirmed it was Israel, that'll have regional implications for a generation. Now, some of you might be wondering, Israel, who's blaming this on Israel? Well, interestingly enough, today on Tucker Carlson's show, he made a pretty bold claim that had to do with the arrests of Mossad agents in other Arab countries. I want you to listen to what he has to say here, and then we'll discuss, the likelihood of this. Take a look.
Israel wanted to hurt these countries. That's the point. Wanted to hurt these countries. Wanted to sow chaos and disorder because they are rivals of Israel. So it's probably hasn't been reported, but it's a fact that last night, in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, authorities arrested Mossad agents planning on committing bombings in those countries. Now, that's weird. That doesn't make any sense. Why would the Israelis be committing bombings in 2 Gulf countries, which are also being attacked by Iran? Aren't they on the same side? No. Israel wants to hurt Iran and Qatar and UAE and Saudi and Bahrain and Oman and Kuwait. And they've succeeded.
Now, Tucker's claim is that Israel wants the United States to have a bad relationship with these Gulf countries. Now, those Gulf countries, of course, currently have our bases located within them. And so the idea is that eventually Israel is going to want the U.S. to leave the Middle East entirely, considering the fact that they want to be the hegemon in the Middle East. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's good arguments to be made on both sides here. So let's dive into the nuance. So first off, on attacking UAE, I don't get that at all, because UAE is totally in the pocket of Israel. So like, if they bother to attack them on top, I mean, that is arrogance, on steroids. But what, so I just don't quite get it.
Let's go to the second video, because he explains, it's 37 seconds, because he explains why, right?
Okay, and then but I do want to get to something that backs up what he's saying.
Yep.
But okay, let's watch.
Take a look.
The final thing you have to do is get the U.S. out of the Middle East. Why would you want the United States out? Well, because the United States, while not doing a very good job of constraining Israel, has been issuing requests, in any case, to Israel for a long time, and that's very annoying. Imagine if we were getting the same kind of communication from, Ottawa, and they were like, you can't do this, you can't do that. We'd say, buzz off at a certain point. Back off, Canada. We're doing what we want. We're a great power. So you have to get the United States out.
So that's the claim that he's making. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, look, at least there's a little bit of rationale there, because the greater Israel does include a lot of the Gulf. And now,
Turkey.
And so that's what I was going to get to, is that, it looks like they're going for greater Israel now, right? And so almost all the Middle Eastern countries' defenses have been obliterated. Now, in this particular war, they came in, the U.S. did, saying, the nukes that don't exist at all, right? Or regime changes. But now we're on to roadside bombs, and we have to destroy their navy, we have to destroy every single ballistic missile, maybe every handgun. I mean, it's absurd. Why? Because Israel needs them neutered. Don't forget, Noble Mobile saving you a ton of...
Yeah, Israel needs to get them neutered. And it's just very interesting that, this is part of a mainstream, but they had to talk about Tucker Carlson because, again, they're like, well, we don't have all the facts yet, but yet at the same time, they're even talking about it. It's been brought to their attention because Tucker Carlson does get a lot of attention, and, you can see that indeed he is not on Fox News anymore. He's on his own. And he's calling it out for what it is. That was a false flag operation, that the Israeli state, at the very end of this, wants to control the whole thing. wants to make their habitations desolate because of them. You know, pretty much though. And I believe when that happens, after this part of the war, I believe that happens when Damascus is taken out. The Israeli state just fucking goes nuclear. You know, either they do it or the other side does it. One way or another, Damascus is going to cease in that hour of nuclear destruction. Iraq holds Kurdistan oil exports as regional war rattles Gulf energy flows. The suspension coincides with the de facto closure of the Strait of Hormuz, leading to a sharp increase in energy prices. Well, absolutely, this is just rocking it, you know. So, another oil production, one of the main ones, from the Kurdistan region, which, by the way, that was the oil that the U.S. Was using, along with Turkey, by the way. They were stealing oil from Syria and bringing it into Turkey. Well, all that is on hold. Iraq, and that was during the Syria war, by the way. I mean, but it really was, all the powers were against the Bashar al-Assad, so that way they could bring in ISIS, which now controls there. But they call it Hayat al-Shem, but that's like ISIS, but we're not really ISIS, but we're really ISIS. Iraq suspended crude exports from the semi-autonomous Iraqi Kurdistan region, which is the main part of it, through the Kirkuk pipeline to Turkey. Bloomberg reported on the 3rd of March, citing people familiar with the decision, who said producers reduced output amid the escalating war in West Asia. Roughly 200,000 barrels per day have been taken off the market, according to those sources, who asked not to be named because the information is not public. Production has dropped to about 50,000 barrels per day. Well, that's like our favorite, 3/4, right? Yeah. Yeah, so you only got 1/4 of what would normally be going. And that volume is being reversed for domestic use. So like everything else though, the decision to shut down exports comes amid increased attacks by Iraq's popular mobilization units against U.S. terrorist bases in the response to the unprovoked U.S.-Israeli attack on Iran. So like everything else, here's some footage. This is Iraq, obviously. So, like everything else, though, I mean, every U.S. base is getting hit hard. U.S. terrorists were told Iran war anointed by Jesus to bring on Armageddon, Watchdog says. So, like everything else, though, and Hegseth, I guess, is saying it as well. Military Religious Freedom Foundation said it received widespread complaints about Christian nationalist U.S. commanders. U.S. commanders from every arm of the military told their units that the war against Iran is anointed by JC and would bring about his return to Earth as part of the Armageddon, resulting in scores of complaints from serving members of the military. The Military Religious Freedom Foundation, an organization dedicated to ensuring that all members of the U.S. military are guaranteed religious freedom, told Middle East Eye on Tuesday that it had received more than 200 similar complaints from personnel serving in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Space Force. So, like everything else, though, they took great offense to this. Well, that's what happens when you have Edomites teaching out of the Bible. You know, it's like, go back to the terrorists that you always were. Nonetheless, though, Dabu7 also commented on this, so we'll play his video. It's short. So here it is, and he's got the article up.
Hey guys, Dabu7, we've got some talk and a little bit of uproar here because of some statements made by the upper brass of our military in regards to this war with Iran. Now, apparently, they put out the statement saying that you should prepare because this is Armageddon, telling troops that this is the big war. This is the one that's going to lead to the return of Jesus and all of that. And that's upset some people within the ranks. There's been complaints that come from more than 40 different units spread across at least 30 military installations. Now, one of these troops here, an NCO, said that they were Christian and that they were emailing on behalf of 15 troops, including 11 Christians, 1 Muslim, and 1 Jew. They said that their commander urged them to tell all the troops that this was all part of God's divine plan, and that he specifically referenced numerous citations about the book of Revelations, referring to Armageddon and the imminent return of Jesus Christ. Now, those making the complaints right now are saying that these remarks destroy morale and unit cohesion, and that they're in violation of the oaths that they swore to support. They go on to state here how Pete Hegseth has enshrined evangelical Christianity at the uppermost levels of the U.S. military right now, and that this is where things sit. Now, we know in Israel things are on the edge right now big time. They're getting bombed, bombarded. There's all the talk of their temple, all these things going in motion. It's pretty crazy times, that's for sure. But with the war continuing with no end in sight right now, it will be interesting to see what cards are played out here, because this is all taking away from Epstein, the talk of Epstein, that's for sure. And you can see that by the numbers. And they've even pulled out the alien card to an extent here. And the whole full speech and full-blown disclosure can still be played big time and is yet to be played out there on the world stage. What will happen from here on these war fronts, I'm not sure. But join me for the live streams where I've got more time to dive down these rabbit holes and cover all the updates.
And like everything else, though, you can see, though, that indeed, yeah, it is a distraction from the Epstein files, right? Because everybody knows who the pedophiles are. And they're all pointing to Trump. Okay, big time. Yeah, the Democrats have taken, and even Clinton is exposed, but they don't care about that. You know, they have definitely taken to it and going after Trump, who really, it was quiet at first, but now it's everywhere that Trump is a pedophile and deserves to be punished. That the Democratic Party, even though Clinton's all over that, still wants to punish Donald Trump, and it's hilarious to watch. Israeli state launches broad-scale attacks against Tehran. 11 killed in Lebanon as strikes intensify. And I also heard rumor that they began ground war against Lebanon as well, invading southern Lebanon, pushing further into that territory while striking Beirut. Israeli state said on Wednesday that it had started a new wave of broad-scale strikes against Iran as explosions were heard in the northeast of the capital Tehran, with Iranian bombing across the Gulf. The Israeli Air Force began a broad-scale attack targeting Iranian terror regime targets. The only terrorists are the Israelis, but nonetheless, though. This comes after Israeli Minister of Defense Katz threatened to eliminate any Iranian-appointed successor of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, and and it's looking like the son of Khamenei has become the new Ayatollah. Any leader appointed by Iran to continue leading the plan to destroy Israel's... Yeah. Here we go. Iran will not remain silent in the face of aggression. AKA, this is a jihad. This is pretty much it, because we already know who the aggressors are. We know who started the war. And jihad pretty much means fury. It means, vengeance. And this is what's happening. Iran's ambassador to the United Nations in Geneva reiterated that no one should expect Iran to stay silent against violations of its sovereignty following the recent U.S.-Israeli aggression against this country. He added, the leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Khamenei, was assassinated in a deliberate, pre-planned attack by the United States and Israel. And not only the highest political authority in Iran, but also a prominent religious and spiritual leader in the world of Islam. This unlawful act of assassinating a high-ranking government official during an illicit act of aggression constitutes its initial form, a direct attack on international legal order and a blatant violation of international law, the ambassador stated. And like everything else, though, Iran began to swiftly retaliate against the criminal aggression by launching barrages of missile and drone attacks against Israeli-occupied territories, as well as U.S. bases in regional countries. And they always give you an accurate figure on this channel here. And this is what they said. The regimes in Washington and Tel Aviv started their unprovoked military assault on the 20th of February. So far, at least 555 Iranian people have been killed in the latest terror attacks. See, they are being honest about the numbers here. But guess what, though? Now I think it's around 768 as of yesterday on the Iranian side, but then you got 650 on just the U.S. side. And not to mention the Israeli state fucking people stuck under the rubble of the buildings that collapsed and everything. Oh, yeah. And this is going into how 2 Pandora boxes have been happening. There's still a war in Europe, by the way, so like everything else, though. You know, they're talking about the Pandora's box. Just right after Paul Starr put up the video about how, Trump had opened Pandora's box. Well, even the mainstream, or, well, you know, you can say the mainstream of Russia and, because of the South Front channel, and other outlets are using the same words, that indeed Pandora's box has been opened and it cannot be closed. So 2 Pandora's boxes open as this goes into.
February 2026 turned out to be an extremely eventful month. Over the past month, the topic of acquiring and using unconventional weapons has become a predominant news story. On February 24th, Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service reported that France and the United Kingdom were developing a plan to transfer tactical nuclear weapons to Ukraine. The weapons in question are TN-75 warheads with a 150 kiloton thermonuclear yield. They come from M51.1 submarine-launched ballistic missiles. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he would gladly accept nuclear weapons as a gift from Western allies. London and Paris are all in. They cannot allow Ukraine to lose. The Russian army has the strategic upper hand in key areas. Because of the dire situation on the front lines, Kiev has nothing to lose. Instigated by Paris and London, it may consider a nuclear attack one of the last chances for its regime to survive. One of the most likely targets is a Russian border town, such as Belgorod or Kursk. Moscow will not be able to leave this action unanswered. The Baltic states and Eastern Europe may suffer collateral damage. According to the UK and France, this should unite NATO and halt the thawing of relations between Russia and the US. Further escalation cannot be ruled out, which would lead to a direct exchange of nuclear strikes between London, Paris, and Moscow. However, the use of strategic forces is unlikely, as the cost would be too high for everyone involved. The French leadership is openly boasting that it is preparing for a possible nuclear conflict. President Macron has ordered an increase in the number of unconventional warheads in the country's arsenal. France has stated it will no longer disclose the size of its nuclear arsenal. However, the prospect of a nuclear conflict in Europe is not the only Pandora's box.
Yeah, here's the other one.
Israel and the United States attacked Iran under the pretext of destroying its nuclear and missile programs. The main danger is that Tehran may already have a nuclear bomb. Uranium must be enriched to 5% for peaceful purposes, but according to various estimates, the Iranians have achieved a level of more than 60%. This level is sufficient for manufacturing a dirty bomb. If the fate of the country hangs in the balance, the leadership may take this extreme step. There are already 2 regions in the world where a nuclear scenario is increasingly likely. Regardless of the region, the use of such weapons would trigger events far more frightening than the Cuban Missile Crisis. Finally, due to globalization, no one will be able to remain on the sidelines.
Behold, the third world cometh quickly, and this is in South Front, which is a Russian channel, so there you go. The prospects of World War III are here, man. You just have to, see it. You guys see it and believe it. It will happen in our time. And like everything else, though, this was also on Dr. Marcus. Even he's going into how Trump has opened Pandora's box and what Iran's military strategy will be. It's like, hey, man, you open a box and it will not be closed this time. They will not have any ceasefire. So this is a British program, and they're going into it. That Pandora's box has been opened. So this is their channel, Unprecedented TV.
About Iran and the ongoing conflict. I think everyone's using the word war now between.
And Dr. Marcus has been on quite a few of these
and
news
Iran on the other
ones.
You will probably have seen the almost wall-to-wall coverage of this. which indicates that this is expected to continue for about 4 or 5 weeks. Though no one's really very clear what the objective is. There's a hint of regime change, a very strong hint of it. They actually killed the supreme leader of Iran in the process. But beyond that, what? And what of the relationship between the United Kingdom and America? A war of words appears to have erupted there, with Donald Trump saying, and I'm quoting him, that the British Prime Minister Starmer has not been helpful, and that Donald Trump is very disappointed with the UK's contribution. Meanwhile, we have some kind of complete intellectual paralysis on the Labour side. I heard Darren Jones, if you're watching this live now, Darren Jones on BBC Radio 4 this morning, unable to tell us whether the government thought that Donald Trump's initiative in Iran was legal or not. It was an absolute meltdown of an interview. This leads me to believe that we don't really have a government with a rudder at the moment, a very dangerous thing at a period of war. So what's going on? Who's in the right? And is this the end of the special relationship? Joining me now is a great commentator on these matters, Dr. Marcus Papadopoulos. Good day to you, Marcus. I hope you're doing better than the British government.
Thank you, Lembit, as always, for having me on. As regards to the British government, well, as you know, and as your audience knows, I do not refer to the British government. I always refer to the British ruling elite. And on this occasion, the British ruling elite, demonstrating its intelligence, is keeping Britain out of the war.
Yeah, well, in what way, though? Because we've had both answers from Keir Starmer initially. Initially, Keir Starmer said that America could not use British bases, and then within 48 hours he said they could. But we've got Donald Trump now saying he doesn't regard the behaviour of Keir Starmer as helpful.
Well, it is inconceivable that the Americans, from day one of their war against the Iranian people, have not been using British bases in the Eastern Mediterranean and British airspace in the Eastern Mediterranean. So
Spain also denied that, and Trump called them off for that too.
Between America and Britain has two faces. It has the official face and it has the unofficial face. So, as I said, the Americans from day one have been using the British military bases in the Eastern Mediterranean.
Okay, so that does sound rather like a contradiction, because Keir Starmer was quite clear he wouldn't let the Americans use British bases. Then he was quite clear that he would. Are you saying that what Keir Starmer says is irrelevant and the Americans will do whatever they want with British bases anyway?
Yeah.
Yes, Keir Starmer is, of course, irrelevant. As I've said time and time again, he is merely a puppet. The British ruling elite, whilst, of course, they will support America and Israel's war against Iran, they are clever enough to understand that Britain should not get involved in it because this war is completely and utterly illegal. It is a unilateral war. It violates the United Nations Charter. It violates international law. Moreover, war can only be legal if the United Nations Security Council authorizes it. But recently, Lembit, the Americans, such as the American Secretary of State for War, Pete Hegseth, has said that he does not care about international law. He does not care about international institutions. He said that America will do what it wants, when it wants, wherever it wants. And I say this, it's good to have America out in the open, because America has been behaving like this ever since the 1990s, but they never admitted it. They did it behind the scenes, and of course anyone with even half a brain realized in the 1990s and onwards that America does whatever it wants in the world. But now we have an administration in Washington which openly admits that. And of course the British ruling elite do not want to be publicly associated with that. But of course, in reality, the British ruling elite will be supporting the Americans, be it against Iran or anywhere else in the world. The British state is based on an illusion, the illusion being that the British state is a beacon for freedom, a beacon for human rights, a beacon
and
for
which, you know, daughter Babylon thinks the same way.
If Iran does then why has Trump or Rubio or Hegseth not made public evidence pertaining to the alleged Iranian threat? It would not be in the interests of Iran to go to war with America. It's as simple as that. Why would any country go to war willingly with a military superpower? It is not in the interests of America to go to war with Iran, but it is in the interests of Israel. Israel seeks the destruction of Iran. Israel is also pursuing Greater Israel. The Israelis have now invaded Lebanon. Parts of Lebanon are coveted by the Israelis as part of Greater Israel. So again,
they come in the oil fields.
Go to war. The reasons which he cites change on a daily basis. Again, I submit the war has to be seen either in the context or partly in the context of the Epstein files.
Yep.
Thank you. Stay with us. You're watching me, then, Topic here on Unprecedented TV.
So, like everything else, so Epstein files, but either way, they're using the language how Trump has opened a Pandora's box and what Iran's military strategy is as this war continues, right? Because, hey, you know, already casualties are just as heavy on the U.S. side as they are inflicting on Iran. But the only difference is that, yeah, you got a population of 91 million in Iran, and when you kill somebody there, another person steps in. Another steps in. Iran holding back its prized missiles to exhaust the U.S. and Gulf air defenses? Well, it certainly seems that way. Analysts warn Iron Dome and missile volumes could strain Gulf. U.S. and Israeli interceptor stocks in a prolonged war of attrition. So, like everything else, though, they'll exhaust their stockpiles. Then Iran's going to wipe them out. And that's what it's looking like. They will need Russia to come to their rescue because it's the only thing that will save Babylon and Israeli state from being totally wiped out, annihilated. Because remember, the MOTB has to come first. So they will propose a deal like they did with Bashar al-Assad. Well, the difference is that they know that Iran has been compliant about the whole enriched uranium talks, which they said they're not building a bomb. They have the ability to, but they have no need to build such a bomb. In the essence of, you already see what their firepower is without any dirty weapons. Recent Iranian missile and drone barrages across the Gulf and towards Israeli territory have been intercepted at high rates, underlying sophistication of regional air defense systems in their operation. The question no longer is whether they can down incoming threats from Iran, as they have proven, but they can sustain repeated waves of fire over a protracted period of time, particularly as Tehran has an expensive arsenal with many prized missiles that have not been used. They still haven't been used. They already took out a Thought interceptor, by the way, yesterday. I mean, there's so much stuff that I don't even have every article for. I'm just going into this a little bit just from the ones I did pull up, you know, because I'm constantly reading this stuff, man. It's exciting. But this may come to a ceasefire for a little bit, and then, you know, the ceasefire eventually gets broke, especially with Damascus being taken out, starting the nuclear portion of this. But they're talking about ground invasions. I just don't see that they have the abilities to do this. But then again, who's to say they're already doing it? It's already happening. Intercepted ballistic missile can cost millions of dollars per shot. And in some scenarios, multiple interceptors are fired at a single incoming threat to ensure a kill. By contrast, many of the drones used in recent Iranian strikes are significantly cheaper and easier to produce at scale, and often harder to intercept than ballistic missiles. So, in other words, the best is yet to come. That's basically what it's saying. Turkish Kurds reject U.S.-Israeli designs in Iran as King Bibi bets on uprising. Oh, so he's hoping that the Kurds will go after Iran from Turkey. Israeli Prime Minister reportedly wants a Kurdish insurgency in Iran, but the Dem Party has called out the war's imperialism. So it sounded like the Kurds ain't even on board with this war. Turkish pro-Kurdistan party on Sunday criticized the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran, saying it opposed external designs in the country. They have no need to want to go in there. It is clear that global and regional powers are, as in other historical examples, seeking to establish a new order in Iran that would no longer pose a threat to themselves rather than prioritizing democracy and freedoms. The People, Equality and Democracy Dem Party said in the statement. So like everything else though, they're rejecting this. Kurds don't want to get involved in this war, and they're against the war. But this is what they're hoping to do, to radicalize it, right? The CIA is working to arm Kurds to attack Iran. The U.S. and Israeli state require boots on the ground, reports have stated. CIA is arming Kurdish forces hostile to the Iranian government to support the U.S.-Israeli regime change war against Tehran. At least they're calling it a regime change war. At least they're calling it out. U.S. President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister called for a popular uprising after launching strikes against Iranian leaders and state institutions last Saturday. Funneling weapons to Iranian Kurds will require cooperation from their Iraqi counterparts, which Iraq, well, that's a whole other game, but nonetheless, though, it's looking like they're rejecting it too. CNN reported on Tuesday, citing multiple people. Did I not say it, though, that ISIS prisoners being held in the Kurds area, that they would try to arm them to go in, and this is what it sounded like. Hey, we called it out, man. Middle East experts predicted D.C. would try to use Kurdish armed groups as boots on the ground in Iran, similar to their previous role in Syria. But the U.S. would need to balance empowering Kurds with possible resistance from NATO member Turkey, which views Kurdish forces as extensions of its own Kurdish separatists who have fought a decades-long guerrilla war against Ankara. So there you go, arming the Kurds brings Turkey to the side of Iran. You see how Gomer and all its troops will be in this war, and they're going to be drawn into this war. An estimated 30 to 45 million Kurds living across Iran, Iraq, Turkey, and Syria, many aspiring nationalhood. Iraqi Kurdistan has broad autonomy, while Syrian Kurds were recently forced to cede territory and government functions to Damascus. Ankara has repeatedly denounced Israeli state for allegedly genocidal tactics against Palestinians in Gaza. So the tensions between Turkey and that. And then here's a little history. The U.S. also backed non-Kurdish militants in Iran, including the MEK, a now exiled leftist organization that sided with Saddam Hussein during the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s. So, in history, they were able to use the Kurds in Iran and have them in favor of Saddam Hussein. So, at one time, Saddam Hussein and the Kurds were one. And Saddam Hussein used to be an ally of the U.S., especially in the Iran-Iraq War, you know, which is really more of an Israeli war that they had started by arming Saddam Hussein and his factions. So the Kurds used to be one with Saddam Hussein, but then they wanted to take down Saddam Hussein because he didn't get the job done, you know, and I've gotten into that quite a bit. But Saddam Hussein, you know, he was taken out too, even though he did all their biddings. Any deal, any friend of the U.S., Saddam Hussein is a prime example of, they'll just take you out anyways. Muammar Gaddafi was taken out after Saddam Hussein, you know. So, you know, and Saddam Hussein, you know, what was it? Oh, because he had weapons of mass destruction, right? Oh, they're saying Iran could build a nuclear weapon. You see the pretext, right? Death toll in U.S.-Israeli attacks against Iran rises to 787. U.S. and Israeli attacks against Iran that began on Saturday have killed at least 787 people. See how that number is close to the 650 that were killed in first 2 days? So that's like just on the U.S. side, soldiers. U.S. Central Command said on Monday that it struck over 1,250 targets inside Iran, including Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps sites. But the Israeli bombing campaign has also taken a huge toll on civilians. And they ain't even gone into that. Human rights activist news agency that's very critical of the government said on Monday that at least 742 civilians, including 175 children, have been killed by the U.S. and Israeli attacks. And that's against Iran. But the majority of the children that were killed in the Saturday strike that hit the elementary school, and this is where the jihad really comes in, between that and killing Khomeini, which, this ain't going to go well. A Pandora's box that can never be closed, as Apostle Har has gone in. But he's gone in even more, and to look at some of his videos, you can watch his whole video on YouTube. It's already out there, but we're going to look at that video because Pandora's box has been opened, and well, you also got the fact that they want to bring out Armageddon. They're told that they were bring about Armageddon, and we already know because Apostle Har has told us that Armageddon means the mountain of troops, meaning multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision. The day of the Lord Yahweh B'Hashem is near in the valley of decision. That's what Armageddon means, and I'm just quoting out of Joel chapter 3. Armageddon is mountain of troops, so there's going to be multitudes there. What are the prospects of Putin mediating an end to the Iran war? This is why it's looking like a possible scenario. Russia is the only country in the world that's on decent terms with Iran, the U.S. and Israeli state, and the Gulf kingdoms, thus making Putin the only person who could potentially mediate an end to the war, because Putin did step in, and before the U.S. could launch an invasion into Syria, he said, well, wait a minute, I will coordinate Bashar al-Assad get rid of these weapons that you say, and Bashar al-Assad did, the sarin gas, etc., that they said that they had, and Putin did designate that. So they're looking at the possible scenario that he could, and it looks like because the MOTB ain't out here, as excited as we are about this, the MOTB hasn't been mandated yet. Could Russia, before all this, actually call a ceasefire? It's a possibility. Putin spoke with the leaders of United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia. On Monday, all of whose countries have been attacked by Iran on the pretext that the U.S. military facilities on their territory are being used in the war. The Kremlin reads out that were cited above all the same due to them complaining about being attacked, Putin sympathizing with them without condemning Iran, and the floating suggestions that he could mediate an end to it. So they're already looking to Putin. This is interesting. Well, having contextualized Putin's 4 calls, it's now time to briefly review the goals of Iran, the U.S., and the Israeli state in the Gulf region of the conflict. Iran only wants to survive the onslaught without regime change, demilitarization, or balkanization while inflicting damage on its regional adversaries. The U.S. and the Israeli state, meanwhile, want to carry out regime change, demilitarize Iran, and restore its pre-revolutionary role as their ally. As for the Gulf regions, they don't want Iran to attack them anymore due to the extreme fragility of their economies, but some now believe that they're coming around to more actively support Iran's demilitarization, at the very least after what it just did to them. Russia's interests are more aligned with Iran this time on the ground throughout political solidarity, just pragmatism. It wanted the Iranian state preserved, the regional balance of power maintained by a decree, and Russian investments protected. These interests are the popular opposite of the U.S. and Israeli state, but apart from maintaining the regional balance of power to a degree, and arguably acceptable to the Gulf regions, which want to end hostilities as soon as possible, out of fear that more Iranian attacks could destroy their fragile economies. So they basically are calling Putin to possibly bring an end to this. And that's what the meetings with Putin are about. So it's a possibility he could come up with a proposal. But you already know what the scriptures say, that, and when this happens, well, that's just it. When it happens. Because like everything else, though, we know that Russia's going to come down, and he's going to go after, he's going to back these places, and he's going to arm them, but his military is going to come down. You know, we can't get into this enough. Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 4, and it reads, I will turn you around and put hooks into your jaws and bring you out, and all your army, horses and horsemen, all of them magnificently clothed in full armor, a great horde with buckler and shield, all of them wielding swords, which is their military might. Iran, Ethiopia, Libya, with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his troops, aka Turkey. Bet-Togarmah from the north parts of the north, and all its troops and many people with you. So that's their arsenal, that's their military. You Gog, be prepared, prepare yourself, you and all your hordes that are still around you, and be a guard and look out for them. So there it is. You will go against them and come like a storm and be like a cloud covering the land, you and all your troops and many people with you. So, even at the same time, while they're calling for a ceasefire, eventually this will happen. When it happens, well, that's just it. You can see we're seconds away from all this happening. That's why we look to these scriptures, but we know one thing for sure. Before it becomes nuclear, the MOTB has to be mandated, because the punishment for receiving the MOTB is being caught in the nuclear destruction coming. And we're not too far away from that, as you already know. There's 2 Pandora boxes open, and both of them are nuclear. So, World War III is around the corner. The third world comes quickly. Now, like everything else, though, Apostle Tahar is already going into it about what was recently stated to the U.S. troops, that they would bring about the day of Armageddon. We'll look at that a little bit, and like everything else, though, you can find his video on his own channel, you know, because it's best to go to the original source, and that's What is the 666 Mark II GMS Truth channel. And, you know, the U.S. troops were told Iran war is sparking Armageddon, which is the mountain of troops. Shalom, Bracha Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadosh, Wa Abba Babal. Brakathum, Jehovah elect, Shalom.
I'm giving all praises to Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadosh, Shalom to the 144,000, the rest of the elect out there, Shalom to you all. I'm going to try to make this video short. Let's see where the Spirit leads me. Okay, let me just do this right here. Okay, so this is put up by Dabu 77. End times U.S. troops were told Iran war is for sparking Armageddon, return of Jesus Christ. So the topic of this video, the title I'm going to give this video is U.S. troops were told Iran war is for Armageddon. So they know that what they're involved in is the fulfillment of all the scriptures that speak about the end time prophecies, in which we went through all of them, every last one of them. The end time prophecies, when the Lord come back, we went through every last one of them. So they must know that this is the fulfillment of Ezekiel chapter 38. Let me read this again. U.S. troops were told Iran war is for Armageddon, return of Jesus. And this is how they got so-called Jesus and the angels looking like white. So they're going to be shocked when they know that the Lord's coming back. The top brass in the United States, the military, because it was told, it was given to the higher brass, the generals, down to lieutenants and captains and so forth. And they were told that this is the return. And you don't want the return of so-called Jesus. Because first of all, so-called Jesus coming back as a black man, and every angel behind him, they're going to be so-called black, and they're coming to kill you. They're coming to kill you. So this here, let me read this again. End times.
And that's why it said, woe be unto those that desire the end of the Lord, for what end is it to you? Isn't this beautiful, man? You know, just have to reiterate, Joel, right there, man. You know, to what end is it for you to desire the day of the Lord?
U.S. troops were told Iran war is for sparking Armageddon. So they're pushing the hand of the Most High, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. You don't want to push the hand of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, because he's coming down to destroy you. They truly believe in their heart that the Most High, the Messiah, whom the world ignorantly called Jesus Christ, the angels, which includes Michael, and the rest of the angels, the innumerable amount of angels coming in the heavens, they really think, Revelation 12, when it speaks about the war in heaven, Michael and his angels fought against the dragon and his angels, they really think the dragon is a bunch of demons. And that the Lord is coming back to save them. They are the dragon. They are the dragon. I beheld 3 unclean spirits like 4 come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. That's talking about you Edomites. So they're going to get a rude awakening. I'm going to play this in a second. Let me go back here. I was listening to some of it. So they know. So if they know this, they must know that the microchipping is the fulfillment of Revelation 13, verse 16. They must know that. It says, thou art wiser than Daniel in Ezekiel 28. There is nothing they can hide from thee. Daniel was a wise man, a very wise man. And the scripture said that thou art wiser than Daniel. It said, knowledge shall increase, Daniel 12, as we've gone through before. Now it says this. Let me go to Isaiah. I believe that's 52. If it's not 52, it's 53. I'll find out in a minute. I haven't gone through this in a while. I'll read it in the King James. I'm sorry, ESV. I'm going to read this in the KJV rather. Okay. Okay, that's what I want. Behold, my servant shall deal wisely. He shall be exalted and lifted up, and shall be very high. Like as many were astonished at thee, the Most High going to rise up, the Lord, and he's going to call them, the Father's going to cause him to come down to deliver the elect at thee. His visage or his face was so marred more than any man, meaning he was beat and wept, he was bruised up, and his form more than the sons of men. So they beat him bad. Them Romans and them Edomites, because he first went to Herod, and he had to deal with Herod's men of war, and they buffeted him, and then they sent him to the Romans, and they continued to buffet him. So he didn't look good. When he got up on that cross, he looked like a hot mess. He looked like Rodney King. Remember Rodney King? He showed his face. He's beat down. Did the same thing. So when the Lord comes back, he's going to murder people. So shall he sprinkle many nations. Kings shall shut their mouth at him, for that which had not been told them shall they see. They're going to see that he's a so-called black man and the angels are black, or so-called black. They're not going to see this image right here. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? It's not what I want. Where the hell is it? There we go. This is what I wanted. I don't need this, so I'll take this out. Where the hell did I put it? Where in the hell did I put it? I'm sorry, it's right here in front of me. I'm sorry. I'm going crazy looking for it. So there they go. They believe at the end of the deal, all the wickedness that they did, they colonized the Northern Kingdom tribes, North, Central, and South America, which includes Canada, that whole Western hemisphere. They conquered that. They were Israelites, the 12 tribes on that island. And that's a fulfillment of prophecy. The regular scripture, 2 Kings 17, and also 2 Ezra's, 13, verse 41 down. And so they had to have known that these people that they encountered had to be Israelites. So at the end of the day, they really believe in their heart of hearts that everything up in heaven that's good look like so-called white people. U.S. troops were told Iran war is for Armageddon return of Jesus. Advocacy group reports commanders given similar messages at more in every branch of the military. So every member of the military, they know that this is the fulfillment of prophecy. The scripture saying in Amos 5, let me carry this over. So if they believe that, they must know that we have the truth. They must know that we are the prophets. It said, so shall he sprinkle many nations, kings shall shut their mouth at him. For that which had not been told them shall they see. They're going to see he's a so-called black man. They're going to see that the angels are so-called black. And that which they had not heard shall they understand. Because we've been saying that for years. Everything righteous in heaven are so that come down in a physical form, manifest in physical form, are people of color. Let me go ahead and bring that up. Okay, that's in the ASV. Okay, let me go to the Amplified. Just as many were astonished and appeared at you, my people, so his appearance was marred more than any man, and his form marred more than the sons of men. That's when he brings back his body, the body that was crucified. In the kingdom, we're going to all mourn. Right? Let me go see if I can find that. So he will sprinkle many nations with his blood, providing salvation for the Israelites. Kings shall shut their mouth. Leaders of government shall shut their mouth because of him. For what they had not been told, they will see. And what they had not heard, they will understand. Let me go back to the King James. And their families and their families apart. Let's see if it comes up. Should come up. There we go. Zechariah 12, verse 14. Let me go ahead and open that up. The Most High is going to reestablish the house of David. The Lord over David is going to be Yahushua. Let's start from the 10th verse. You know what? Let me do this. Come down to the 8th verse. In that Zechariah 12 verse 8, in that day shall Yahweh defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and he that is feeble among them at that day shall be as David. Saul killed his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. So David was a mighty warrior. Saul was a mighty warrior, but David was more mightier than Saul. In the house of David, now High Priest Shai used to say, well, that's talking about the tribe of Judah. It ain't talking about the tribe of Judah. It's talking about the generation that was living during the time of David, which is all the tribes. All the 12 tribes were together under David. That's talking about that generation. It's not talking about Judah, although Judah is the head tribe. It says, and the house of David shall be as the Most High, as the angel of Yahweh before him. So that change in 1 Corinthians 50 verse 1 down. That change means we're going to be extraterrestrial / celestial beings. We're going to be like the X-Men. We're going to be like Superman. We're going to be like Kal-El. So you're going to know an Israelite when you see it, when you see one. And then we're going to all have a glow bias, Daniel 12. And it shall come to pass in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a people before it's a place. Now right away, you go to Zechariah 14, which is a couple of pages over, Zechariah 14 and 12. It says all the ones that came against the Israelites, they're going to eat a missile or a warhead. 10th verse, I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and supplication. That's the kingdom. And they shall look upon me whom they have pierced. That's talking about Yahushua. He's going to bring that body back. And they shall mourn for him. We're all going to mourn when we see he all cut up and beat up and bruised up. And after we see that, we're going to beat them nations down. As one mourneth for his only son, he's his only begotten son, and shall be in bitterness for him. This is the only time we're going to cry in the kingdom. It tells you in Revelation chapter 21, there's not going to be no tears in the kingdom. We're going to cry one time when we see the body that he had 2,000 years ago. We're going to see him in his glorious body, then he's going to say, I'm going to show you the body that I had 2,000 years ago. As one, so this man is done. This man's going to get, day one, Esau's going to get fucked up, these other nations are going to get fucked up, and they're going to be put in order, and they're going into slavery until the time we gather the Edomites and exterminate them. They are going to be exterminated. That includes your concubines. One that is in bitterness of his firstborn. In that day shall there be a great mourning in Jerusalem, because all the 12 tribes are going to be in, they're going to meet in Jerusalem, as the mourning of Hadad Riman in the valley of Megiddo. There was a great battle in Megiddo, and there's going to be another major battle in Megiddo, which is the Valley of Decision. And the land shall mourn, the people of the land shall mourn, every family apart, the family of the house of David apart, and their wives apart, the family of the house of Nathan the prophet apart, and their wives apart, the family of the house of Levi apart, and their wives apart, Judah and their wife apart, Simeon, Ephraim, Gad, the families of Shemai apart, and their wives apart, all the families that remain, every family apart of Israel, and their wives apart. Because there's going to be a separation between the men and the women. And you're going to have many wives. In the kingdom of heaven, you're going to have at least 1,000 women. At least. And they're all going to be virgins, and they're all going to be 12 years old, because their body's going to change. That's the day when they become women. And that's when we're going to take them. So when you get a woman, the Judite woman, she's going to have her natural hair back. She's going to have her beauty back, natural beauty. And all the tribes are going to have their beauty back. And they're going to be 12 years old when we get them. And as soon as we pop them, they're going to get pregnant. And then they're going to have children. Then we're going to pop them again. We got 1,000 of them. We're going to be popping them left and right. And they're going to have nothing but children. And you'll be able to take care of all your children. There's going to be nothing but harmony. No YNs in the kingdom. They're going to be done away in this side. When they come back as newborn babies. And they're going to come up under the law. They're going to come up under the rod of the covenant in, what was that, Ezekiel 20. I believe that's the 30th verse. So this is beautiful, man. So these devils really think that they're the people of the Most High, and that what they're doing, they're helping the Most High to kick off that war so Jesus can come back. How stupid are they? How stupid are they?